Alright, what's poppin', people? We're back. And as of last night, Machamp finally getting a suspect test. As y'all may recall, about a month or so ago, maybe a month and a half, back when Dragalge got its suspect test, I pointed out my little voting slate of it, and I'm like, yeah, no, I think Machamp should be what we're testing right now. I think this mon's just broken. And well, call me a visionary, but here it is, the Machamp suspect test. The basic reasoning, of course, is as follows. Machamp is really strong. It doesn't really have defensive counterplay to it. I'm gonna go over that later. We got like this generic checks to fighting types thing. And I want to talk about why common checks to fighting types don't really work when you're talking about Machamp. You know, we got a decent amount here, but we're going to analyze why that might not be enough. Anyhow, as per usual, if y'all have been enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you aren't already subscribed. I'm sure some significant percentage of you aren't, and let's get that number of you unsubscribed folk to be lower. Anyhow, as a basic rundown of Machamp sets, you've got one that's gonna be seen everywhere. The most common set by far is just gonna be your standard Flame Orb Guts set. And then I'll do a little bit of talking about Assault Vest, because I do think the set still has at least some niche worth maybe talking about. But I want to put the focus on the set that's getting Machamp Suspect tested, which is just Wall Breaker set. Now, Machamp as like a Pokemon, the concept of slowish but really, really strong Wall Breakers, nothing new to Pokemon. You could even look at Inu. And there are plenty of other Pokemon just like Machamp that are really slow Wall Breakers, but that don't have a whole lot to check them on the defensive end. As we could just scroll through here, you could see Kabaraja, you could see Exploud, you could see Golurk, you can see Grimmsnarl, you can see even Sirfetch'd if you want to compare it to another fighter. You could see offensive Sylveon. There are plenty of those sorts of Pokemon that don't have a whole lot of what you would call guaranteed or consistent defensive checks. So what separates Machamp from those? Well, it's going to be this move right here, Facade. And Facade is why Machamp kinda is just better than the other fighters, in particular Sirfetch'd though, because when you look at how people would try to deal with Sirfetch'd, when it was first really running the tier, the most common check was just going to be Talonflame, sending Talon out, hoping for a Flame Body Burn. You know, it's just kind of viewed as reasonable enough, you outsped it. If they were Leak and they didn't crit you, you could heal off the damage afterwards, assuming you successfully forced them out with a thorough Brave Bird. But Machamp does not fear Talonflame's Flame Body. It doesn't fear Vileplume's Effect Spore. And it doesn't fear status moves from, say, Will-O-Wisp Wheezing either. Or, like, a Quillfish, if you want to resort to, like, the dredges of your options. Facade means you've got a super spammable move that you've never got really much reason to not use. Close Combat is stronger. When you factor Stab into it, it is stronger. But Facade is so low drawback that oftentimes you can find Machamp just consistently using this move, and it doesn't really matter, because all of Machamp's otherwise good defensive answers, they're getting 2-hit KO'd. And for the most part, a lot of them aren't fast enough to contend with it. I'll go into more in-depth once we're covering those, why they're so inconsistent, but for now, I just want to make that note. Facade is 2-hit KOing these otherwise sturdy answers, and so unless you can consistently keep offensive momentum up against Machamp, which isn't impossible, unless you can do that, you're probably going to cede some turns to it, and it's probably going to pick multiple Pokemon. And yeah, a little brief rundown real quick, too, of Assault Vest Machamp. Why is this set any good? Machamp's Special Bulk's actually not too bad. You know, it's nothing spectacular, but it's around, like, Clefable levels, at least. And so if you augment this with an Assault Vest, you can look at a lot of special attackers in the format that Machamp could actually panic check. I would say the most important one of those is Salazzle, but even something like a Starmie is not OHKOing Machamp unless it's Psyshock. But Machamp has that bulk with Assault Vest actually be a cool, I was gonna say offensive check, but like a cool bit of insurance against some of your scary special wall breakers. Even something like Choice Specs Exploud no longer can just Oko Machamp for free. So it is a cool set. With no guard, you can actually tap into Dynamic Punch and potentially fish for some confusion hits. You still have knockoff. You also get to have Stone Edge still, so you're still hitting Talonflame. You retain coverage for Salazzle as well. And it does incentivize heavy slam usage, because Bullet Punch with this set is a lot weaker than it is with the boost from Guts. And so you can still heavy slam, for example, Sylveon or Diancie. Not as relevant as the Guts set for sure, but I think it is still worth mentioning that this appears occasionally. And so, hey, may as well draw some attention to it. Now, we're going to go over what a lot of the standard fighting type checks now are in Inu. These are going to be the defensive ones first, then I'll do brief coverage of the offensive ones. As you'll see, there are not very many offensive ones, and while I probably could have thrown more Pokemon in here, like, Decidueye is still generally faster than them. Heliolisk, Rotom-Mow. I'm gonna limit it to the ones that can, like, consistently threaten the most damage, if that makes any sense. This list is smaller than it probably should be, but I left some Mons out intentionally. Now, let's first talk about Mantine. So, Mantine is a nice option for checking some of these fighting types for... The main reason for its speed. 70, especially when you're talking about Machamp, is actually really convenient, because most Machamp are adamant. You'll see Jolly sometimes, but the damage rolls do start getting a little bit dicier without entry hazard support when you opt for Jolly. So, most of the time, Mantine's actually going to be able to outspeed Machamp and threaten it with Hurricane. Unfortunately, Mantine's really weak. I remember I forget who it was I was battling on the ladder, but I had my Mantine in against the Machamp, and my Hurricane did like 70. And yeah, so Machamp just got wished up later on in the game after, you know, 2-hit KOing my Mantine as I hard switched in. And you don't want to see the Air Slash calcs, they're not any better. I see a lot of people run Air Slash on Mantine, and I don't know if it's because it's on the analysis or something. Oh, oh. 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 Okay, I see why I see why people run Air Slash. I'll update that later. But as you can see, yeah, no, Mantine's just not strong enough to really consistently threaten something like Machamp. And so, it's not the worst answer, because you know, to fighting types as a whole, it's actually kind of shaky. It's mostly just, you probably aren't getting O-code, and then you hit with Hurricane in return. Most of the fighting types are frail enough to where that's fine. Unfortunately, Machamp has got just enough natural special bulk to where it doesn't get tabled by Kane. Mudsdale. Mudsdale is a very funny guy, because it's just kind of thrown onto every team as his just splashable defensive answer that should check any physical attack early in a pinch. You can of course reference the Toxicroak low kick calc all you want. Mudsdale's still a check to it. Not a great one if you get any chip, but still a check. The issue with Horse trying to check Machamp is just so strong that switching into it is a task that not many should be preparing themselves for. This is an instance of why you'd want to use CC sometimes, because against Horse, which is getting those defense boosts for stamina, one, Facade actually wouldn't even 2-hit KO anyway if Mudsdale didn't have stamina. But the fact that CC does this much damage is just obscene. It's probably one of the better defensive answers. That's really weird to say because you don't even resist fighting. Mudsdale's just that bulky. The issue, of course, being a couple things. One, right? So, Mudsdale is often going to be tasked with checking a lot of different Pokemon throughout a game as is. And so it's not something you can really expect to always be at full. Fortunately, it does pair super well with Vaporeon, so you can supplement its health and keep it up with Wish, but that can often cause you to lose momentum in games, and so it's hard to guarantee that. Two, Mudsdale's also really commonly taking knockoffs throughout a game. It's, you know, it's, again, look at all the Pokemon it's tasked with switching into. And so getting a knock onto it, maybe even with Machamp just earlier in the game, is not a too hard a thing to do. And Mudsdale is kind of reliant on leftovers to not get to it KO'd by Machamp's close combat. You know, factor in stamina, factor in potentially protect even. This is just whatever's auto-imported. We've been seeing a lot of toxic protect lately to help against Rotom Mow. Scout out if it's locking into Leaf Storm or Volt Switch when it's Choice Scarf. But without leftovers, you do see Mudsdale kind of struggling long term. So it is a better check, but not that great. Sylveon, gonna just briefly show you this lovely little calc. Is this the set? Yep, I don't want to switch in ever. I have to always have the offensive momentum. Even switching into Knock, you're just getting to it KO'd if there's any hazards up. So that's fun. Talonflame. Yeah, so again, Pokemon, it actually checks Surfetch pretty decently. Even when you get crit, you do tank the Brave Bird, so you're still forcing the Surfetch user to risk getting KO'd the next turn. This isn't a check! Facade into Bullet Punch almost always KOs, so that's not really a thing. We can look at Vileplume now, too. So fully physically defensive, which they never are. This is a more realistic calc. Like, okay, congratulations. CC into Facade almost always kills, and keep in mind, too, Vileplume really does run itemless a fair amount of the time just for the Poltergeist immunity, versus, like, Choice Band Decidueye, Golurk. I think maybe one other mon that's escaping my mind right now, Delmise, I guess. So Vileplume's not that great. I saw Weezing was the next Pokemon up. Weezing's kind of fallen off a little bit in usage too, but okay. I'm dead after Stealth Rock. Nice. Cool. Xatu? Oh, I mean, you're faster afterwards. Hope you're not switching into Knock. I have seen more Xatu start going bold again, because people are starting to just say, speed first, Adamant Surfetched, and Jolly Machamp, a little bit more practical. I mean, you're still getting to it KO'd by Facade. So Xatu's always forced into those really awkward lines of, okay, come in on a Knock or Facade. If you're coming in on Knock, you're dead. You know, you're always picked off by Bullet Punch the next turn anyway. Come in on Facade, okay. Better not get caught on your turn you're roosting. And even if you do, stay at Psychic, like, you're not killing. That's a huge reason that so many of these Pokemon don't check Machamp as well as you'd like to. They just aren't strong enough. And it is worth mentioning, because I don't want to be super biased. And I'll point out the flaws of Machamp. Right. It is slower, so there are more Pokemon that can contest its speed. And because you're using Flame Orb Guts as your way of breaking, you do have to take into account that chip damage matters. Switching into Stealth Rock, that matters. Burn damage, that matters. And it can push you into these health thresholds. I mean, I'll even, like, look at the Talonflame Brave Bird calc. Like, this doesn't KO. Now, we'll start getting damage rolls, too, after Stealth Rock and Burn rack up literally at all. But the fact that there's just not a lot of stuff that's consistently threatening to OHKO, unless you're relying on, straight up just offensive Pokemon, it's a little tough. And so when you look at offensive Pokemon, Indeedee is probably the best option of just, this Pokemon is dropping Machamp on its neck. Salazzle's as well a pretty good one, although keep in mind you do not OHKO without chip damage or a defense drop from close combat. Same deal with Starmie. You could have Psyshock, though, that will drop Machamp. And in Toxicroak, Gunk Shot needs, like, so little. I think it just needs Stealth Rock to guarantee an OHKO. But when you look at offensive checks beyond these few, they're not a whole lot. It is worth pointing out ghost types. I probably should have included some. So, like, something like a Choice Band Decidueye. Decidueye is nice because both Close Combat and Facade are the two moves Machamp wants to be using the most. And being a ghost type, Machamp's actually immune to both, so that is really helpful. Unfortunately, NU just doesn't have a whole lot of great ghost types beyond that, let alone fast ghost types. The next one you'd probably think of when you're thinking about NU is like Delmise or Golurk. both of which kind of seeing less and less usage as the months go on. So, I mean, here, let's make a new little box. What are a couple Pokemon that people will resort to in the most dire of times? Well, I mean, this exists, Colbur Palisand, because, again, like Decidueye, immune to CC and Facade, and with Colbur Berry, Machamp's knockoff even isn't doing as much as it would want to over time. So this is a mon that can actually pivot around it decently. I mean, you can even look at, like, Quillfish, I guess. You know, Intimidate, give it Pain Split, EV it enough to where you're outspeeding Machamp, which you could afford for as little as this even. But, you know, I've done a test of this interaction with Eternally before, and from what we found out, it seems that at best, Quillfish is trading a KO versus Machamp. So, you know, not the best of situations. We could go back to Wheezing even. What if you're a neutralizing gas? Make it so Guts is not in play anymore. Well, Facade still does like 37-ish. It was like 37 to 40 something, I think. Let me find the calc again, because it wasn't exactly the best. Alright, so let's see. Facade right now is saying 49 to 58. Okay, this does not actually take that into account, so we need to change that. Okay, yeah, 33 to 39. You're still getting through it KO'd. You can't switch into Machamp with Stealth Rock up. All of this is to say, there's not really defensive checks to Machamp, and I think at a point, although you should always keep in mind offensive counterplay is very much a valid thing to bring up when talking about these slower wall breakers, there comes a breaking point where if a Pokemon just doesn't have defensive answers to any degree, or at least to not any reliable degree, that matters a bit more than, oh, but these Pokemon are faster and revenge kill it. Anyhow, that's basically my case for banning Machamp. It does have flaws, of course. Like we had mentioned, it's kind of slow, so there are a lot of Pokemon that can outrun it. And reliance on Guts for your damage boost does make it more vulnerable to just taking a lot of chip over time and being pushed into those KO thresholds from not only these bulkier Pokemon, but even some of the revenge killers that I did leave off the list, like, for example, Rotom-Mow or Serena, or maybe a modest Exploud. You know, I actually just realized I didn't include Exploud. I'm sure that Oko's Machamp. Anyhow. Hey, to be fair, I generalized it to fighting type checks as a whole. So Pokemon like Tauros and Exploud are a little harder to put on this list because El Memento, Dechoice Scarf, Passimian, you know. Yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts below on how you feel you're gonna vote or would vote on this Machamp suspect test. I personally think this is maybe the most clear-cut ban vote we've had since Dragalge. I think Dragalge was just pretty clearly overpowered, and I think the same for Machamp. But let me know your thoughts below, because there's always some room to debate. Hope y'all enjoyed. I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.